The shelter was silent that morning, until a faint whimper broke through the cold air. When the staff rushed to the gate, they found a collapsed German shepherd, soaked, trembling, and heavily pregnant. Her eyes were glassy with pain, yet when one volunteer reached out, she licked his hand, pleading not for herself, but for the lives inside her. They named her Grace and carried her inside. Hours later, as she went into labor, everyone gathered to help. But when the vet looked closer, his hands froze midair. "Wait, these aren't puppies," he whispered. And the room went silent. The rain fell hard that evening, drumming against the roof of the Willow Creek Animal Shelter. Inside, the tired staff was preparing to close when a faint scratching came from the entrance. When the door opened, a man stood there soaked to the bone, holding something wrapped in an old blanket. "Please, she needs help," he whispered. Inside the blanket was a German shepherd, thin, trembling, and barely conscious. Her ribs showed through her fur, her paws bleeding from walking too far. But what made everyone freeze was her swollen belly. She was pregnant, and clearly about to give birth. The shelter's lead veterinarian, Dr. Harris, rushed over. "Get a heating pad and fluids," he ordered. Grace, that's what they decided to call her, whimpered softly as they placed her on the examination table. Despite her pain, her eyes darted around the room, protective and afraid. "She's been through something terrible," murmured a nurse, gently stroking her fur. Dr. Harris sighed. "She's strong, but we'll need to watch her all night." The shelter dimmed its lights, the storm still raging outside. Grace's breathing slowed as she drifted into uneasy sleep. None of them knew that by morning, the entire world would know her name. The shelter was eerily quiet that night. A single lamp glowed in the corner of the examination room as Dr. Harris and his team hovered near Grace, who lay breathing heavily on a soft blanket. Her eyes fluttered open with every contraction, her paws twitching as if she were fighting an invisible battle. "Easy, girl," whispered Sarah, the young nurse, stroking her muzzle. "You're doing great." Hours passed. The clock ticked past midnight. Rain tapped against the windows, mixing with the steady hum of the medical equipment. The tension in the room was thick. Everyone knew this moment would decide whether Grace and her unborn litter would survive. Finally, she gave a sharp whimper, and the first newborn slid gently into Dr. Harris's hands. But as the light hit the tiny body, his brow furrowed. The creature was quiet, too quiet, and its skin looked oddly smooth, grayish. Unlike any puppy he'd seen before, he exchanged uneasy glances with Sarah. "It's unusual," he murmured. Grace whimpered again, her body trembling as another contraction began. One by one, more newborns arrived, each stranger than the last. By the time the sixth was born, the room had gone silent. Sarah whispered, "Doctor, what are they?" Dr. Harris didn't answer. His hands shook slightly. Something was very, very wrong. Doctor Harris leaned over the examination table, his pulse racing. Under the harsh white light, the newborns twitched weakly, their movements slow and eerie. They didn't cry, not the high-pitched squeaks of newborn puppies, but soft, rhythmic hums that sent chills down everyone's spine. Sarah swallowed hard. "Doctor, their fur. It's not even fur. It feels like," she hesitated, brushing her gloved fingers against one. "Like velvet." Dr. Harris lifted one carefully, his hands trembling. Its skin shimmered faintly under the light, almost metallic in texture. Its eyes hadn't opened, yet faint blue veins pulsed visibly through its body. "This can't be right," he murmured. "These aren't canine traits." Another nurse gasped. "They're not even nursing." Grace whimpered softly, curling her body protectively around the strange litter. Her maternal instincts were clear. Whatever they were, she saw them as hers. Dr. Harris exchanged a look with Sarah. "Run a temperature check. Heart rate. Oxygen." His voice cracked slightly. The monitor beeped, each reading more confusing than the last. Then one of the newborns twitched, letting out a sound, a low, almost melodic chirp. Everyone froze. Dr. Harris slowly stepped back, his face pale. "They're alive," he whispered, "but they're not. Dogs." The room fell into stunned silence, and the impossible had just begun. By dawn, the shelter had transformed into a scene of organized chaos. Dr. Harris hadn't slept. The strange newborns lay inside an incubator, their tiny bodies twitching softly beneath the gentle warmth of the lamps. Each of them glowed faintly, a soft, bluish hue that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. Sarah entered the lab, clutching the results of the blood tests. "Doctor, you need to see this," she whispered. Her voice trembled. "Their DNA doesn't match any known canine species. In fact, it doesn't match anything in our database." Dr. Harris frowned, flipping through the printouts. His eyes widened. "Half of their genetic markers are human-engineered," he said in disbelief. "They've been altered, created." The staff stared at each other, horrified. "Created? You mean someone made them?" He nodded grimly. "Grace must have escaped from somewhere. Somewhere experimenting on animals." Sarah covered her mouth. "Oh my God!" Without warning, flashing lights appeared outside the shelter, government vehicles, animal control vans, and men in dark suits. Someone had reported the case. AS officials stormed in. Dr. Harris stood protectively in front of the incubator. "You're not taking them until I know what they are," he said. The lead agent met his gaze coldly. "Doctor, they're classified now." And in that instant, Grace's miracle became a mystery far bigger than anyone had imagined. By the next morning, news of the mysterious birth had spread like wildfire. Cameras lined the shelter gates, reporters shouting questions that no one had answers to. Grace, now recovering, lay quietly in her corner, her eyes fixed on the incubator, holding her strange litter. Despite the chaos outside, she remained calm, a mother guarding her young doctor. Harris and Sarah sat in the office, exhausted and haunted. "The government took samples," Sarah whispered. "They said it's confidential. But what if they destroy them?" Dr. Harris looked through the glass at Grace. "Not if I can help it." He had already hidden one of the newborns in a separate unit, far from the officials' reach. "She risked everything to bring them into this world. I won't let anyone take that away." That afternoon, as the authorities sealed the facility, Dr. Harris filed a false report, claiming one of the creatures had died during the night. But in truth, it was alive and safe, quietly breathing under a soft blanket in his CAR.AS. He drove away from the shelter. Rain began to fall again. Grace watched through the window, her golden eyes glowing faintly in the dim light, as if she knew, and somewhere deep inside, the secret continued to live. Weeks passed, and the storm that once surrounded the shelter faded into whispers. Dr. Harris had quietly resigned, choosing a quieter life far away from cameras and headlines. On a small countryside property surrounded by golden fields, Grace now lived peacefully. No cages, no noise. Only the sound of wind brushing through tall grass. Each morning, she would trot out into the sunlight, her fur gleaming, her tail wagging gently. And beside her, wobbling on uncertain legs, was the small creature Dr. Harris had saved, the one the world was never meant to see. It wasn't a puppy in the ordinary sense, but its eyes held something unmistakably pure, innocence. Dr. Harris would watch from his porch, coffee in hand, smiling softly. "You both survived," he'd whisper. "That's all that matters." The bond between Grace and her child was unbreakable, mother and creation, united not by species, but by love. Sometimes, at dusk, he would see the little one press close to Grace, their silhouettes bathed in golden light. It was a reminder that miracles often come from suffering, and love can bloom even from cruelty. Dr. Harris wrote one final note in his journal. They were born from pain, but they chose love, and that makes them more human than any of us.